Pessimism or optimism is a really interesting, really interesting question. To be honest, though, it's kind of like the same battle as just idealism versus realism. So yeah, this idea or two of opposing forces itself there. To be honest, pessimism and optimism is kind of like not really the same thing, but to be honest, they linger in this comfort. Optimism is about finding hope itself. Finding hope itself, or basically the positive in things, while pessimism is actually on the negative. But both of them is literally just freaking hope, to be honest, dude. Optimism is pessimism is just freaking hope, to be honest. But one itself just lead themselves to pessimism because that's the most freaking easiest, to be honest, dude. Negativity is really easy to obtain. While of optimism itself, there is just while of optimism is just basically following a blind premise, or basic blind premise itself, or basically a blind premise, or basically or a point itself. That's basically it. Well, the idea of these two things, to be honest, there, I see a lot of YouTubers there, specifically of this one, kind of like seeing the philosoph. I don't know how to call this for basic type of content, to be honest, but basically the philosophical, spiritual channels usually though. One is basically talk itself there about that, or actually pertaining or referring to that. It's just really, to be honest, just the same freaking thing, to be honest, dude. The same freaking thing, to be honest, dude. It's just basically like both of them is just basically just freaking cowardice. They both is just basically just freaking cowardice, to be honest, dude. That's pretty much it. Cowardice that will happen in a nutshell to the freaking future. Optimism is basically of the future, while pessimism itself is just lingering or snaring oneself into freaking scorn, and just basically freaking constricting itself, or just in a concentric way, just thinking and just meditating about basically the present there, not just the present, but basically the negative stuff there, or you just basically kind of like it will transition or transfer itself there to freaking nihilism, just freaking, to be honest. But all of them is just freaking comfort there. All of them is just basically offered by Mara, or freaking Mara, or even freaking Satan, to be honest. There, to just basically make you freaking rot your soul, to be honest, or have soul rot, just soul rot. It's just much better to freaking take nothing, or just freaking like nothing. Better to take nothing and just both of them, to be honest, dude. So yeah. And sometimes I kind of said this before, to be honest, that how the frameworks will, how the framework snare or basic snare or confine someone to a thing, like believing and disbelieving, to be honest, believing that I've heard the freaking like new alchemist about the idea of new level, new devil, to be honest. If you know that freaking channel, to be honest, I don't freaking watch that channel anymore, to be honest there. But yeah, about that channel, to be honest. So yeah, it's kind of like to be it's kind of like having like too much spiritual knowledge, but really it's just the mind using it against you. Yes, 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 it procures or basically show or basically display or present the freaking idea, present the freaking idea that we don't know much world to this reality. But to be honest, like super doing, that basically like really knowing everything is good. Nah, it's just basically having this freaking like feeling itself that is basically like I'm getting that usually in one sense there, if one labels himself as he's spiritual, or I am spiritual, or some I am spiritual there, one will attract to that fucking notion, to be honest, dude. To attract to that notion and its energy, to be honest, dude. One's much better to be like in neutrality, not even like neutrality, beyond that, it's just fucking nothing, to be honest, dude. It's fucking nothing, to be honest, dude. one just labels themselves and for like a normal person, essentially they would just be bounded by that stuff there, to be honest, dude. And also as well in thinking about that thing as well there, that thinking that they will be bounded by a freaking framework and such is also as well not a great thing, to be honest. So there would be a balance, should be of skepticism, the skepticism and adherence to as well, but adherence to not to a basically really like subtle sense. This is just basically like this is basically tapping or basically tapping or basically tapping or basically making your foot or your feet to the waters, basically your foot or feet sank to the waters. In a nutshell, that's pretty much it. Foot or feet sank to the water, but just a bit, to be honest, as you're basically just tiptoeing. That's pretty much it. This is about the idea about this frameworks, to be honest, dude. Frameworks, to be honest, to be in a really weird sense, to be honest, in a really weird sense, we cannot read the freaking wall at all times itself. It seems like the basically the nervous system, not nervous system, but just the mind itself, just limit what reality is supposed to be, to be honest. It kind of make a lot of sense there. It actually like is seeing basically videos schizodumps there. Oh, this freaking YouTuber called schizodumps there. About this basic news video, this basically this reality, where just the mind is just basically just in a nutshell, just limiting our perception of reality truly is. And if and if and if we are presented by the true reality itself there, we would freaking die, to be honest, dude. We would freaking die, to be honest. We would freaking die, to be honest. Not even die, we cannot fathom or even comprehend that thing. If the mind itself there has a basic coping mechanism, basically has a coping mechanism, probably that's because it cannot freaking fathom. Is because it's basically defends us, not defends us, basically they basically defend us or basically block us to what reality truly, or what reality truly is, or what is reality in itself there, to be honest though. For some reason we only for some reason we are standing in this freaking wall, and some people as well, even spiritual people as well, only has a really small, the normies has only a small hole on that wall that perceives the light, and also perceives the light, and the spiritual people has the bigger hole. But how the heck we could read the freaking hole, to be honest, dude? We could read the freaking hole, to be honest, dude. Not the hole, but maybe the wall, to be honest. That's a really like a thinking, to be honest, dude. Thinking, to be honest, dude. So yeah, what is really the freaking the nature of ego there? When one said the ego is the devil, they're freaking wrong, to be honest, dude. They are somewhat right but somewhat wrong. One must fathom themselves what the heck this idea of the ego is the devil, because the mind would perceive it as literally such. Not literally, but in a sense, literally, but in a dualistic sense. That so basically, reality is basically in a nutshell that, not reality, but in the ego is that. And basically, perceiving that the ego is a devil, there would be in mind a dualistic thing there that would see it as literally, not literally, but an actual sense, or basically in an exact way. That's basically it though. But in reality, the ego ain't the devil as well. Ain't the devil, dude. Or basically ain't the bad thing even. It's just, to be honest, just adhering to basically its being or beingness there. Not really beingness, but basically like the ego might shapeshift one like fucking demon there, and one there thinks it's actually a demon there. The demon kind of like that idea though. That idea, that idea. So yeah, but there's actual demons too as well there. But the worst one is basically fucking like shape shifting. To be honest, it's pretty much it. So really one must basically have like a warning or just basically be alarmed on that, to be honest, to take acknowledge of that thing. It's pretty much it. And for some reason itself there, it's just it's just that in the full and basic and just that for some weird reason I also have this idea that basically in this reality is just in this reality there is just really odd, to be honest, dude. It's just basically this inversion of karma, that good does not reward that much while bad rewards there. You see like freaking like evil people in the reality there. And you see about the idea that you need to be a freaking bad person and stuff there to attract or something there. Why the heck was that thing there? The reality itself there is so feminine, to be honest, for that matter, dude. It's not the feminine energy, but basically the fucking inverted one. The inverted one is so strong, it's so weird. It's so weird. And only in the spiritual realms, even I guess like beyond spiritual realms itself, the masculine there were really strong because of logical logos, to be honest, though. Logical logos, to be honest. That's it. Really freaking strong as it. But in this reality, it's just a freaking, it's a big of becoming. It's just of the feminine. Of the feminine. So yeah. So that's kind of pretty much it there. This is basically that it there. And if feminine is kind of like attuning to like the reptilian, not attuning to the freaking, not attuning to the reptilian or the snake itself, of basically like this cycle of becoming, this cycle of becoming, this cycle of becoming, then to be honest, like what the to be honest, how the heck that's good, or basically Dharma would thrive in this reality, to be honest, dude. If everything is just basically like impermanent as hell, just changing. It, it is on one. It is one to know if the reality is changing for good or for bad, to be honest, for good or for bad. But it's kind of like the idea in basically like the idea of One, basically the creator of time there, that there's a loop of good and evil as well there. Good and evil and good and evil. But really the god there is time. The god there is time. Or basically this freaking father time was a Saturn, to be honest there. How could you really want to achieve absolute good? True absolute good. Not false good, truly there. False good is abiding by freaking order, but truly truth, to be honest. It's pretty much it. In this freaking reality, it's really odd though. Really odd. Do you expect like really the Dharma, really like the Dharma would freaking work in this reality though? Reality. So yeah, it's really freaking weird. That's it. So yeah, the Dharma basically, how would one would expect the Dharma would expect the Dharma would work? So how would freaking one would expect Dharma to win, to be honest, dude? In this is particularly reality there, particularly reality, and also if also the hermetic principle of as above so below as well, meaning the physical reality also reflect the freaking spiritual reality as well. In a nutshell, the spiritual reality has absolutely not scot free, to be honest, dude. It's really freaking weird. Like expecting like Dharma to really work, to be honest there, in this reality, to be honest, dude. So yeah. It is specifically like inverted reality though. It's really odd. And to be honest, that's basically the issue of nature itself there, or the nature of nature. If one must know it, the nature of basic survival and basically thriving there. And actually, like all men, not all men, but basically all sentient things grow themselves and basically like compete and not compete against themselves, and make this freaking coercion. To be honest, not coercion, but basically a conflict or a schism to one another. That's pretty much it, to be honest. And even the universe, God against nature. gods against nature. I know it's just basic. This is really, really in a context of out of context there, but God against nature, nature against God, nature against man, man against nature, man against God, man against God. If basically the freaking concept of reality is thriving and also as well conflict, how the heck though? How the heck would one expect a freaking order and that in a context of true order or freaking true good? That's pretty much it. It's basically like that idea though. So yeah, it's really weird. This is scales out.